From the outside, they looked perfect, a mother and her little girl who had survived everything life could throw at them. Dee Dee Blanchard and her daughter Gypsy Rose were the kind of people that melted hearts. They lived in a bright pink house in Springfield, Missouri, a home built for them by Habitat for Humanity after Hurricane Katrina destroyed their old one in Louisiana. Gypsy sat in her wheelchair, smiling shyly, clutching a stuffed animal. Her voice was soft, childlike. Her mother's arm always wrapped protectively around her. To the neighbors, Dee Dee was an angel, a single mother caring for her sick, fragile daughter with patience, devotion, and love that could move mountains. Doctors said Gypsy had leukemia, muscular dystrophy, seizures, vision problems, asthma, even developmental delay. Her list of illnesses filled binders, thick ones, signed by countless doctors who never once questioned Dee Dee's story. Because Dee Dee always had the answers. She spoke the language of medicine like a professional. She knew the pills, the dosages, the treatments. She kept oxygen tanks beside the bed, feeding tubes in Gypsy's stomach and sympathy pouring in from strangers across the country. People donated money. Celebrities sent love. The Make-A-Wish Foundation sent them to Disney World. To the world, Gypsy Rose was a miracle child. To Dee Dee, she was a project, one she built, lie by lie. But Gypsy was starting to notice things that didn't add up. She'd see other kids walking, running, laughing, and she'd wonder why she couldn't. When she was alone, sometimes she'd stand just to see if she could. And she could. Then her mother would catch her. And with a soft smile that hid something darker, she'd say, "You know what happens if you move too much. You'll get sick again." Then came the pills, the needles, and the words that cut deeper than any scalpel. "You're my brave little girl," she'd say. "Mommy knows best." Everyone believed Dee Dee, even doctors. When they questioned her, she'd charm them or switch hospitals altogether. Records vanished. Birth certificates changed. Gypsy's age was rewritten to make her seem younger, more helpless. Neighbors said Gypsy had the mind of a 7-year-old, but inside she was a young woman, confused, lonely, and desperate for freedom. Every night as Dee Dee tucked her in, Gypsy stared at the ceiling and whispered to herself, "What if Mommy's wrong about me?" The cameras kept flashing, the donations kept coming, and the lies grew taller than the pink walls that surrounded them. But behind those walls, a truth was festering, one that would soon explode into one of the most shocking crimes America had ever seen. Because Gypsy wasn't dying, she was trapped. Part 2. The Woman Who Lied. When police first looked into Dee Dee Blanchard's life, they saw a single mother who had faced unimaginable challenges. A woman who devoted every waking moment to caring for her sick daughter, Gypsy Rose. Neighbors adored Dee Dee. They brought food, helped with transportation, even donated money. The Blanchards were seen as heroes, survivors of tragedy, but behind the pastel-colored walls of that Missouri home, nothing was as it seemed. Gypsy's entire childhood had been built on a lie. Dee Dee claimed her daughter had leukemia, muscular dystrophy, seizures, even a mental age of 7. Doctors saw long lists of diagnoses, thick medical files, and endless prescriptions. But every test came back normal. Whenever one physician doubted Dee Dee's claims, she simply switched hospitals, always with a story ready, a new doctor, a new diagnosis, a new sympathy campaign. The truth? Gypsy was a healthy young girl trapped in a web of lies spun by her own mother. She could walk. She could eat normally. But Dee Dee forced her into a wheelchair, shaved her head to look sick, and fed her crushed pills she didn't need. She even tricked charities into building them a wheelchair-accessible home, sending them to Disney World, and giving them free flights and donations. To outsiders, Dee Dee was the definition of a selfless mother. To Gypsy, she was a captor. Inside that house, Gypsy's life was strictly controlled. No friends, no school, no phone. Dee Dee read her mail, watched her every move, and even told her that her birth certificate had been destroyed. Gypsy believed she was younger than she really was. Her mother told her she was born in 1995. But in truth, Gypsy was 4 years older. The manipulation ran so deep that even doctors began to question their own sanity. One pediatrician, Dr. Flasterstein, grew suspicious. He reviewed Gypsy's medical history and realized something didn't add up. He wrote in his report that he believed Dee Dee suffered from Munchausen syndrome by proxy, a mental disorder where a caregiver fabricates or causes illness in someone under their care for attention or sympathy. But no one acted on his warning. After all, who would believe that the sweet, soft-spoken Dee Dee could be lying? And Gypsy? She remained trapped, smiling for cameras, waving from her wheelchair, wearing pink hats and princess outfits. Every photo of her smiling next to her mother hid years of abuse. Gypsy couldn't scream for help, because in her world there was no help. But as Gypsy grew older, her curiosity started to push against the bars of her invisible prison. She began sneaking onto the family computer late at night while Dee Dee slept. And for the first time in her life, she saw the world outside. She watched movies, chatted with people online, and discovered something terrifying. She wasn't sick. She wasn't dying. She had been lied to her entire life. And with that realization came a spark, small at first, but growing stronger every night she stayed awake in the blue glow of that computer screen. That spark would soon turn into rage, and that rage would change everything. Because Gypsy had just started talking to a man online, a man who would become her first love and her partner in a plan that would shock the entire world. But that's a story for part 3. Don't miss it. Things are about to get dark, and if you haven't already, make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Part 3. The Secret Online Romance. It began like most forbidden things do, quietly. Late at night, while Dee Dee slept soundly in the next room, Gypsy Rose would slip out of bed. The only light in the room came from her computer screen, her window to the outside world. She joined chat rooms, watched movies, and scrolled through pages about young women living their lives freely, lives she could only dream of. And then one night, she met Nicholas Godejohn. He wasn't rich or famous or anything like the heroes in her movies. But to Gypsy, he was kind. He listened. He cared. Nicholas was a shy, awkward man with his own struggles. He lived far away in Wisconsin and had been diagnosed with autism. But to Gypsy, that didn't matter. For the first time, someone saw her, not as a patient, but as a person. They bonded over fantasy movies, religion, and role-playing games. But soon their chats turned romantic and then sexual. Gypsy had never known intimacy. Every feeling was new, raw, and dangerous. She began to fall in love. They created an imaginary world together, one where Nicholas was her protector and she was free from her mother's control. But reality always came crashing back when the sound of her mother's footsteps echoed down the hallway. Dee Dee controlled everything, the internet, the TV, even Gypsy's thoughts. So Gypsy learned to hide her double life. She deleted messages, erased browsing history, and smiled every morning as if nothing had changed. But inside, she was changing. She began dreaming of running away. She told Nicholas everything, how her mother lied about her age, her illnesses, even how she faked seizures in front of doctors. Nicholas was shocked. He didn't understand how anyone could be that cruel. Gypsy told him she wanted out, no matter the cost. At first, they planned to meet in secret. In 2015, Gypsy convinced her mother to take her to a movie screening. Nicholas traveled from Wisconsin just to be there. When he walked into the same theater, Gypsy's heart nearly exploded with excitement. Her dream was standing right in front of her. She pretended to be a stranger when Dee Dee was near, but when her mother went to the restroom, they talked. They held hands, and that night, they had a brief encounter in the bathroom, hidden from everyone. Gypsy finally felt alive. But after that night, Dee Dee grew suspicious. She began tightening control again, changing passwords, monitoring Gypsy every second. Gypsy felt the cage closing in. She begged Nicholas to help her escape. But Nicholas, he had his own demons. He began talking about violent fantasies, dark ones, and Gypsy, desperate for freedom, didn't stop him. In her mind, this was the only way out. She told him exactly what her mother did to her, how she locked her up, hit her, and controlled her every breath. Nicholas said, "I'll protect you, my love." And so began a dangerous plan, a plan born from love, desperation, and madness. They began plotting Dee Dee's death. It started with text messages, then phone calls. Then one night, Nicholas said he was ready to come back, this time for good. Gypsy mailed him a knife. She told him where her mother kept the sleeping pills. She said, "When it's done, we'll finally be free." But freedom would come at a price neither of them could imagine. The next time Nicholas arrived in Missouri, he wouldn't be coming to visit. He'd be coming to kill. And that's where everything changed forever. Part 4. The Night of the Murder. It was June 14th, 2015. A warm, humid night in Springfield, Missouri. And inside a small pink house on West Volunteer Way, everything was about to change forever. Dee Dee Blanchard believed she was safe that night. She had locked the doors, tucked her sick daughter into bed, and taken her own medication before drifting off to sleep. But Gypsy wasn't in her room. She was in the next room, quietly texting Nicholas. She typed, "She's asleep." Then came the reply, "I'm coming in." Gypsy's heart raced. Her hands trembled. After all these years of dreaming about freedom, it was finally here. But deep down, she knew this wasn't how freedom was supposed to feel. Nicholas had taken a bus from Wisconsin to Missouri. He carried with him a backpack, and inside it, gloves, duct tape, and the knife Gypsy had mailed to him. The blade was small, but sharp enough to end a life. Gypsy met him quietly at the door, her face pale, her eyes filled with fear. She handed him a pair of gloves and whispered, "She's in her room? Just make it quick." Then she ran to the bathroom, covered her ears, and locked the door. Moments later, the silence of the house shattered. There was movement, then whispers, then a single scream that froze Gypsy in place. Nicholas stabbed Dee Dee 17 times. When it was over, the house fell silent again. The air was still. The monster was dead. But in that moment, something else died too. Gypsy's innocence. She came out shaking, crying, and hugged Nicholas tightly. She whispered, "It's over." But it wasn't. Not even close. The two cleaned up the house. Gypsy took $4,000 in cash her mother had hidden and packed a few clothes. Then, hand in hand, they left, stepping out into the humid Missouri night as if escaping a nightmare. They didn't run far. They took a Greyhound bus to Wisconsin, Nicholas's home. On the ride, Gypsy leaned against his shoulder, crying softly. She had wanted freedom her whole life. Now she had it, and it felt hollow. When they arrived, they checked into a cheap motel. Surveillance footage later showed them buying snacks, makeup, and condoms at a nearby store. They laughed, they kissed, and in their twisted minds, they believed they had started a new life together. But back in Missouri, Dee Dee's body lay cold and undiscovered. Days passed, and neighbors began to worry. The Blanchard house was unusually quiet. No Facebook posts, no visits, no doctor calls. Then something strange happened. From Dee Dee's own Facebook account, a shocking post appeared. It read, open quote, "That is dead," close quote. The neighborhood erupted in panic. Friends rushed to the house, banging on the door. No answer. When police arrived, they broke inside and found Dee Dee lying motionless in her bed, stabbed, covered with a blanket. Gypsy was nowhere to be found. Wheelchair gone, medication gone, and everyone believed the same horrifying thing, that Gypsy, the sick little girl in the wheelchair, had been kidnapped. Police issued a nationwide alert. News stations broadcast Gypsy's face. Missing girl with cancer, kidnapped after mother's murder. But little did they know, Gypsy was safe, alive, and watching it all unfold on TV, She saw her photo flash across the screen, her name in bold letters, and whispered to Nicholas, "They think I'm dead." For the first time in her life, she wasn't the victim, but she wasn't free either. The truth was coming, and it was coming fast. Because someone had just traced their Facebook post, and the trail led straight to Nicholas's house. That's where everything began to unravel. Part 5. The Truth Unravels. When police traced that Facebook post, they weren't expecting what they found. The IP address led them straight to Wisconsin, to a small house in Big Bend, just outside Milwaukee. It was Nicholas Gadajan's home. Detectives surrounded the building before sunrise. Inside, Gypsy and Nicholas were asleep, curled up together, thinking their new life had just begun. But moments later, the door crashed open. "Police, get on the ground!" Gypsy froze. Her heart pounded. She was dragged out of the room, barefoot, shaking, wearing a nightgown. She didn't even resist. She just kept repeating softly, "Is my mom okay?" When officers told her Dee Dee was dead, Gypsy's face went pale. She whispered, "I wanted her gone, but not like this." Nicholas, meanwhile, showed no emotion. He calmly confessed to everything: how Gypsy asked him to come, how she gave him the knife, how she hid while he killed Dee Dee. He said he did it because he loved her, because she told him it was the only way they could be together. The next day, news broke. Gypsy Rose Blanchard found alive after mother's murder. The world was stunned. How could the sick, wheelchair-bound girl everyone pitied possibly walk, talk, and plan a killing? Doctors, neighbors, charities, everyone felt betrayed. They had donated money, built ramps, given free trips to Disney, free houses, all for a story that wasn't real. But then, the truth began to surface. Medical records revealed Gypsy had never been sick. No leukemia, no muscular dystrophy, no feeding tube needed. Her mother had forged documents, shaved her head, starved her, and lied to doctors for years. Dee Dee had committed one of the most extreme cases of Munchausen by proxy ever seen. Gypsy had lived trapped in a web of medical abuse, controlled, isolated, manipulated. She was told that if she ever disobeyed, she'd die. So when Nicholas came along, she saw him as her only escape, a dark, desperate kind of freedom. In the interrogation room, Gypsy told detectives everything: how her mom made her pretend to be sick, how she forced her into a wheelchair, how she used her as a tool for sympathy, and finally, how she felt when it all ended. She said softly, "I just wanted to be free. I didn't want her dead. I just didn't see another way." The case shocked the nation. People didn't know who to blame: the girl who plotted a murder or the mother who created a prison out of love. Gypsy was charged with second-degree murder. Nicholas faced first-degree murder. During the hearing, she appeared small, fragile, almost childlike, but this time, no wheelchair. Just a young woman standing on her own 2 feet for the first time. Her public defender told the court, "She's not a monster. She's a victim who lost control." Even the judge seemed conflicted. He said, "This case is unlike anything I've ever seen." In 2016, Gypsy Rose Blanchard accepted a plea deal, 10 years in prison. Nicholas, on the other hand, refused. He was sentenced to life without parole. As Gypsy was led away, she turned to the cameras and said, "I'm freer in prison than I ever was with my mom." The world watched in silence. For the first time, people began to understand what she had endured: the fake diagnoses, the surgeries, the lies, and the unbearable truth that sometimes even love can be deadly. But Gypsy's story doesn't end in that courtroom, because behind bars she began to change, to grow, to learn, to understand who she truly was, and what came next would surprise everyone: freedom, fame, forgiveness, and a nation divided. Stay tuned for part 6, The Girl Who Lived, where Gypsy steps into the world again and faces the question, was she a victim or a villain? If you're still watching, don't forget to subscribe, because this final part will leave you speechless. Part 6, The Girl Who Lived. The prison gates closed behind her. But for Gypsy Rose Blanchard, it felt like the first day she could finally breathe. Inside those gray walls, she began to rebuild herself, piece by piece. She took classes, read books, and learned what it meant to make her own choices. For the first time, no one was telling her what pills to take, what food to eat, or what to believe. She started therapy to understand the monster her mother had created and the monster the world thought she was. In letters, Gypsy told friends, "I'm not that broken little girl anymore. I'm finding out who Gypsy really is." But still, the guilt lingered. Every night before she slept, she thought of Dee Dee, the woman who hurt her and yet the woman she once loved more than anyone. She said in an interview, "I forgive her, because if I keep hating her, I'll never be free." That forgiveness, it was the final chain breaking. Then came 2023. After serving 8 years of her 10-year sentence, Gypsy was granted parole. The news hit every major outlet. Gypsy Rose Blanchard, the girl once trapped in a lie, is finally free. When she walked out of Chillicothe Correctional Center, she looked different. Confident, calm, older. No wheelchair, no pity. Just a young woman walking toward the cameras, smiling softly at the world that once pitied her. In her first interview, she said, "I'm not proud of what happened, but I'm proud of how far I've come." The internet exploded. Millions followed her overnight. Documentaries, podcasts, and even movies wanted her story. People debated endlessly. Was Gypsy a victim or a criminal? She began to share her truth online. Through TikToks, interviews, and live sessions. Her voice was gentle but steady. She told young women, "If you feel trapped, speak up. Don't wait until it's too late." Yet fame came with a shadow. Critics said she was profiting off tragedy. Others said she deserved every bit of peace she could find. Through it all, Gypsy stayed quiet, focused on living, not surviving. In 2024, she married a man named Ryan Anderson, someone she met while still in prison. It shocked her followers, but for Gypsy, it was simple. For the first time, she said, "I get to choose who loves me and how I live." Still, the ghost of her past never truly left. When people asked if she wished things had gone differently, Gypsy looked down and said softly, "Every day. But I can't change it. I can only move forward." And forward she went, counseling others, advocating for mental health, and shining light on Munchausen by Proxy, the disorder that destroyed her childhood. Her story helped doctors, nurses, and families recognize the signs and save others from the same nightmare. Now Gypsy Rose Blanchard is free, not just from prison, but from a life built on lies. She's learning how to smile without guilt, how to dream without fear, and how to exist, not as a victim or a villain, but simply as herself. As she once wrote in her journal, "The girl who lived in lies died with my mother. The woman who walked out of prison is me." And with that, the story of Gypsy Rose comes to an end. A tale of pain, love, control, and freedom. A story that forces us all to ask, when love becomes a cage, what does it take to finally break free? If you followed this story from the beginning, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, because the next story might just shake you even deeper.